For 2 decades, or roughly 20 years, my life has revolved around surfing. At a young age of 6 or 7, I absolutely fell in love with surfing. Very fortunate to have been pushed into it by my father at the young age of maybe 6 or 7 here in Nova Scotia. And it has not been just a sport, it's truly been an obsession of mine, and it has really shaped my life as I know it. But lately, after coming home, after living abroad and traveling the world chasing swells, in the USA, Europe, in Africa, Mexico, I'm realizing that the dream I grew up with of becoming a pro or surfing amazing waves here in Nova Scotia is truly dying. And no one is really talking about why. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. In the late 2000s, when I was just getting into surfing as a young kid, it felt different. It was a very different Canada. We had the dreams and we had our heroes, professional surfers here in Canada who can make a living doing what they love. Crack open an SBC and you'd see guys like Nico Manos putting Nova Scotia surfing on the map, and Lawrencetown specifically, getting wide recognition even in the US. He was riding for Quick at the time, guys like Kelly Slater and Dan Reynolds and many other amazing surfers. This is when the golden era of surfing. I think this magazine is from the spring, I don't know if it'll focus, 2011. And I know where this shot is, and it's a pretty special wave we have. And I remember when this came out, it was absolutely mind-blowing as a kid. And I just dreamt of being able to stay here in Nova Scotia during the fall so that I could score these hurricane swells that were glorified and blown up all over the internet at the time. Yeah, and he made me think that I could build a life around scoring the cold, inconsistent surf here we have in Canada, and build that dream, you know. He did a real good job, and that was really a special time in Canadian surfing. And not to mention the talent you can see here with Noah Cohen absolutely getting barreled on one of our pristine lefts that we were fortunate to have. But yeah, it's just it's a very special era of surfing. Here's the same wave again from a different angle. I remember when this came out, and I couldn't go to bed at night as a young kid, maybe 12 years old, 10 years old, and just dreaming of moving to the ocean full-time year-round. Fast forward about, 5 or 10 years and the downfall of Quicksilver and Nico retiring from professional surfing, and we kind of fell into the era here of 2018, 2019, where we still had amazing surfers here in Nova Scotia. This is obviously West Coast, Noah Cohen again. But let me try and find, yeah, so you can see here, this is Hurricane Maria. I remember scoring the swell when I was in university, or maybe in high school. You can see here, this is Logan Landry. He still had a pretty good stint of semi-pro or pro surfing here in Nova Scotia. Scoring epic waves, as usual. Know a lot of these awesome spots. But maybe in this one, he'll show my other mentor, someone I look up to a lot in surfing. Mentors of mine, this is also in Nova Scotia, one of the West Coast surfers. But other guys like Logan Pimac, masterful tube rider. I've been fortunate enough to surf with him in Mexico and Puerto Escondido and Bar de la Cruz and many other good waves and sessions we've shared together. But guys like that had to move away from pro surfing. So guys like Logan Landry that I just showed you in the other magazine, and Logan Pimac, close friend of mine, they moved away from pro surfing. Yeah, Logan now has switched into fishing media and content creation in that sense. Not to mention his family's successful business family, and then PMAC has moved into running his own carpentry and cabinetry, woodworking business here on the South Shore. So you can kind of see, even here, the surfing was on the decline, and these are some of the last magazines in Canada. Here you can see there's a lot of West Coast content, because East Coast surfing, here's some East Coast. Nico, still absolutely ripping. But yeah, it's a shame, and this is some of my cherished memories here, is having these magazines. More East Coast, Nova Scotia content from some amazing fall sessions. Here you can see Logan Landry, and then I don't know if you can see, there's PMAC, so there's Logan PMAC. Now if we compare that to some of the guys on the West Coast, like here, Pete DeVries, surfing one of the premier breaks there, and then Justin Quintal and
more of Noah Cohen before he moved to the US, and Pete DeVries again at another amazing wave. They've been able to extend their careers and still continue being a professional surfer. Not to mention there's new young and upcoming surf prodigies like Reed Platinius and many other young rippers out west. They've managed to keep sponsors and while maintaining money coming in, still chasing their dream of surfing. You see here's another one of Noah Cohen before he moved down to California. But it's quite a contrast. You can really see how the West Coast has a ton of money in industry, whether it be Rip Curl, Pete signing with Arc'teryx. And then you can see here on the East Coast, empty lineup, epic surf, huge day. This is one of the best days of all time. A lot of people argue the best at one of our amazing lefts. It's a bit of a shame. There's a real monetary difference between the two coasts, and it's the working man, versus very deserving, but very lucrative and successful career that the West Coast guys have. And I really believe that influence or that really stems from the West Coast, versus East Coast, and the West Coast having a ton of funding in California and money and opportunity.
And the point of this video isn't to complain or make you feel sorry for me as an East Coast surfer, because I've been traveling the last 2 years, whether it be southern Mexico, surfing some massive beach breaks or point breaks, or over to Africa and Morocco, surfing point breaks. They're endless. It's mostly just to look, in terms of that trend over time, and just had this tough conversation, because it's something that's been, in the bottom of my stomach every time I return to Nova Scotia and the East Coast here, where my family settled 400 years ago. Seeing people suffer and, really struggle to be able to spend time in the water and do things that they love, it can really take a toll on me. And I really want to be that voice and, start this conversation so that maybe surfers and us can build more community and get together and help other surfers that aren't as wealthy or don't have as much free time, or both. So that they can get out in the water, and so that the community continues, and it's not just a dead end that the ghost of Nico Manos and his descendants of semi-pro surfers, and then my generation just having no high quality talent, and the ones that do, leaving abroad for other job opportunities or partners or warmer weather. Regardless, it's something I want to try and talk about, and not to get ahead of myself, but I truly believe the core issue here isn't just that the seasonal patterns here are so highly variable. So in the summer we can get water up to 22, 23 Celsius, and then in the winter down to 0 or -1 even during really cold Februarys. I don't think it's that. I think it's not even inconsistency of the surf here. I truly believe it's the economic reality of living here in Nova Scotia. To be blunt with you, the pay in terms of job opportunities is quite poor, and people really struggle to put food on their table. And you often hear stories of young, successful, hardworking people moving to Alberta to go find jobs in the oil fields or other industries for that matter, or even go to the US. There's many talented surf videographers and photographers and creatives here from Nova Scotia and Canada in general that have moved down to the US because the opportunities are significantly better, and then life is easier.
So just to go into some of the difficulties of surfing here in Nova Scotia. So here is some of the wetsuits we have, as you can see in a bag. I don't know how many wetsuits we have in here, but to surf in Canada, and specifically in Nova Scotia, our waters range from -1 up to the low 20s. You can see here we have a ton of boots too, but to do that I need to have wetsuits from 2 millimeters all the way up to 6.4 millimeter wetsuits. Not to mention I need boots ranging from 8 millimeters down to 3, and then as well as gloves and mitts and potentially lobster claws too, if you really want to get into the details and try and minimize using gloves or minimize using mitts so your hands don't go numb within the first hour. But yeah, the gear is extremely expensive. Here you can see, I think this is a brand new 6.4 I ordered the other year. So I have one of these for the deep winter sessions, and usually I try to have 2 of every suit so that I can surf twice in a day if I so choose. But then I also have a 5.4, 1 or 2 4.3s, and then 3.2, and then a 2 mil short arm. So you're talking, what, 5-6 wetsuits, and each one's at least a few $100s, with the winter suits being up to $800. It quickly adds up into the thousands, and if you're traveling to places where you just rely on board shorts, I've actually saved thousands of dollars over the last 2 years, which is incredibly sad. But yeah, that's a real challenge to surfers here in Eastern Canada. Say, hey, they have the same problems out west in Tofino or in the West Coast, but they don't have the same sort of seasonal variation in temperature, so you can really get away with just a single 5.4 and maybe 1.43, unlike here where you need a whole arsenal of wetsuits. So I really, probably in our shed back there, I think we have up to 25 suits, me, my brother, and my dad, so it's quite shocking. And you can see a few of my surfboards up here. I don't know where the rest of mine are, but I got a ton in each of our houses. But not to go into more detail, but we even have different boards for the winter versus summer, or, boards for heavy wind, cold water, and thick wetsuits versus, when I'm in board shorts in Indonesia or something like that. So complexity and cost. Next is the commute. And unlike coastal towns in California or Europe or Indonesia or even Mexico, our setups are very remote, and they require me to do a lot of driving, as well as have a off-road vehicle in the winter. Something like this might get away with it, but in a big snowstorm when there's up to 1 meter or 3 feet of snow, something more off-road capable like my Toyota 4Runner here is truly required. And in these instances, it burns a ton of gas. And with the way the carbon taxes have gone and the Liberal leadership in Canada, gas has gone from below $1 per liter up to roughly almost $2, or 1.93 cents. $1.93 yesterday, which is truly shocking. And it means every time I fill up my tank, we're talking $120, $130, $140, which quickly adds up. And it means not many people want to go surf or, take that risk and drive to the more remote locations. And that's a shame, because in university, gas went down 60 cents, 70 cents during COVID. And at the time I had an old Honda, and I was able to punt a ton of remote surf and score some epic waves totally by myself. So yeah, this is the real cost killer. And when you think about how many kilometers we put on these cars in 1 year just chasing surf, 25, 30, 40,000 kilometers, going up and down the coast, it quickly adds up to thousands. I usually spend close to $1,000 in gas a month, so it's a real challenge and a struggle. Unlike the Pacific, the North Atlantic, and specifically this section of the Atlantic, is incredibly fickle. We're blessed with some of the longest and best point breaks, I would argue, that I've ever visited. We have endless coastline, jagged coast with a ton of potential. However, the swells that do hit us are extremely short-lived. They come and go within hours sometimes, or maximum 2 days. So it means we have to get on the road, and you have to be out there when the wind flips, and during that short window. Places like New Jersey and the rest of the East Coast struggle with the same inconsistency and short windows. We do have incredible high-quality surf, but you have to be on it. And that means that a regular 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 job is totally not an option if you actually want to get the best waves. And that's why you see guys, entrepreneurs, really succeeding in this realm. You see guys like Dean Petty building an empire of businesses, whether it be building his houses or coffee or pizza. He's been able to manage this sort of, surf first, work around it lifestyle. And it's kind of the way I've designed my life. And it's not an easy, perfect solution. I've had to miss a lot of sessions over the years, but and while you would argue this is the case for surfers all over the world, I would be hesitant to say that it's equal here in Nova Scotia, and especially in Canada in the winter. The light hours are so limited. The sun goes down at 3-4 o'clock, coming up at 8:30 or so. So people who have 9 to 5 jobs have no chance of scoring surf, pretty much, for a few months of the year. And then in the summer, the ocean goes flat as a lake. I call it Lake Atlantic. Us surfers get seasonal depression. Often the ones who have extra money travel to Central America or Indonesia or many other oceans where there's surf in our off season. But yeah, it's a huge challenge here because the limited light hours, and places like Norway would face similar challenges. So people who have 9 to 5 jobs cannot surf. So in summary, because of all these barriers I just mentioned, with the cost of equipment, the cost of commuting and requirement for vehicles, the requirements for flexible work,
as well as I didn't even go down the path of how pay in Eastern Canada is incredibly low. We'll say, hey, you made 50,000 or 70,000 Canadian dollars or 100,000, but they don't actually look at what can you buy with that 100,000. So compared to 15 years ago or 10 years ago, back then you could get a ton of value, and Nova Scotia was incredibly cheap. When I first moved to Halifax full time, it was $600 a month in rent with utilities and internet provided. Now, it's not even the realm of possibilities. We're talking $1,800, $1,600 to $2,000 for a single unit in the HRM, without power and Wi-Fi included often. So we're talking about a 3x in terms of cost. And then if we're talking food, like buying dinner and just going to the grocery store, it's gone up multiples. I used to be able to get steaks for myself for $5, $6 back when I was in school. Those days are long gone. When I go to the grocery store, it's $20, $25 now. So even if people's pay went up from 2005, 2010 to now, the pay increases here are not even close to the actual increase in cost of living. Not to mention vehicle costs, insurance costs, and all these crazy things, and the devaluation of the Canadian dollar. I haven't even gone down that rabbit hole. But there's so many aspects that have made surfing significantly harder in Canada. And this is not just specific to surfing. It's many other niches or passions that are struggling in Canada because people are forced to work so much just to survive or to stay afloat or to pay their mortgage or to put food on their table and have the dream of having a kid. It's a real challenging time in this country. And it's either going to destroy us or it's going to make us much harder or harder to kill human beings and turn us and to become better people. But surfing here has become incredibly difficult financially. And even though I've grown successfully, built a business and scaled my revenue, I still feel financially choked off when I return here. And I've never realized that until you leave and live in a place where you aren't spending $120 to fill up your truck, spending hundreds of dollars at the grocery store. Only then when you return, you're shocked at, wow, the costs here are outlandish. And is the value that I'm getting truly worth it, And it's a real shame for me to say this, and it's something I really wish we could change. But I don't see any easy, silver bullet for this problem. It's happening all over the world, but I feel we're getting hit some of the hardest here in Eastern Canada. So what is all these negative things that I've just gone over caused? I believe it's a missing generation. I also believe if you just go look at the birth rates in Canada, they're incredibly low, some of the lowest in the world. So the fertility rate per woman, I think it's 1.2 or so in Canada, and that's way, way below replacement. And the government has resorted to mass immigration to stop this. And while some people might rejoice because their assets have gone up, aka the boomers, us young people have got absolutely financially obliterated. We don't own assets. We rely on our labor to generate a revenue or our business or our expertise. And when you bring in millions of other young people willing to work for very little, it means we're going to be fighting really hard just to keep our existing wage or our existing business. That's a huge, huge problem. And then I believe now we're going to have a missing generation in terms of sports. So in terms of surfing, I don't see many young people out there now. And the young people that are there often come from money. They're come from a family that's fortunate enough to own a lot of assets. And when the government prints way more money and brings in tons of immigration, and their asset prices balloon, then they have more spare time to go surf. So we're really seeing, in my opinion, that core work surfer kind of, tradesman kind of dying. And we're seeing it become more of a luxury rich person sport. And this is not just Canada. Where I've gone over the past few years, I've really felt that trend. You see all these surf influencers, and look at me talking to a camera. Yeah, making a living from surfing, but in a very different way. Before you go charge epic barrels and hunt trip, and you'd be posting in a magazine, or you'd go on the pro tour and make some money from that through sponsorships. But now you have to sell your soul to the devil and really put yourself out there, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It means you're getting more authentic
content, like Nathan Florence is a great example. Many other amazing YouTubers that do surfing sort of content. But it also means that core, surfer that just wants to go to his, carpentry business and then wants to go get barreled after work, it's becoming incredibly difficult for him to still have a family while doing this. And it's not all bad. Maybe it's just the world telling me I need to grow or to change my dreams or change my location. I've accepted this, but it does make me sad because there are lots of young and up-and-coming surfers out west in Tofino. There's tons of talented surfing there, and you see them winning contests down in California or Mexico or abroad in El Salvador for the ISA Games. But you don't hear of any young Nova Scotian surfers really making a name for themselves, and that makes me quite sad. You would think that we would at least have one or two. Guys like Nico Manos, they're the next generation from that. But I've tried my best to improve my surfing abilities as much as I can, but I'm never going to be a very good small wave surfer. And I've long accepted that. I've really pivoted more into barrel hunting, and that's what truly makes me excited to wake up every morning. To go to the beach, see a huge spitting barrel, or go to some new slab or reef. And what really gets me down sometimes is when I compare Nova Scotia surfing to other East Coast hubs like New Jersey, New York area, or North Carolina Outer Banks. Down there they have a number of pro-level surfers, or at least guys who can make some money from it in the surf industry. I have several friends down there that shape boards for a living. But here in Nova Scotia, with such a low population density, and I'll be transparent with the level of poverty here, there's very little to no industry. Only in the last few years did Nico build a second surf shop to compete against Cannon Beach. So we've had good factory boards from Paizel, Sharp Eye, etc. But prior to that, it was almost impossible to get good boards here. You'd have to know a guy, and he'd have to put in a big order, through California, and then it would get shipped up and maybe come here half a year later. So surfing's always been a very large challenge here, and obviously the climate plays another role in it. But I actually believe we have the most high-quality surf out of anywhere on the East Coast in terms of the number of our good surf spots, the diversity, and the size in the winter. Because we're further up the coast, the storms hit us the hardest. It does mean we do have the worst winds sometimes, but we have such a unique coastline where we have offshore wind for almost every direction except southeast. It's a real shame that the industry never really came up here or stayed up here following Nico Manos's rise. Just to wrap this video up, in summary, I think surfing here in Nova Scotia and Eastern Canada has become truly a luxury, and I hate saying that. I don't think it's dead completely, but it's definitely a luxury, and I've been blessed to be able to be raised into it, but it's become more and more of a luxury because it requires such a immense sacrifice, whether it be your career, your partner, where you live, how you live, everything around it, your whole schedule, just for these fleeting moments, of getting amazing surf. And I have to ask the audience, I have to ask you, do you think the soul of the sport we're losing here, or, that core sort of element, due to the pure cost and the hardship? Or is it just filtering out, the people that aren't truly dedicated, to the lifestyle of surfing? I'm not sure how to answer this, and I don't know how the future is going to pan out, but I truly hope that we can build a society where more people have kids and more people teach their kids at a young age how to surf, and then so that we can give back to the community, and that those kids can then dream of becoming surfers like we are, or better level than we are, and continue to improve like the rest of the world is. Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about this summer when I've been home, because when I'm abroad, you see families teaching their kids to surf at a young age of 3 to 6, and of course it's cold here, but people really live to surf and live for the ocean, and I think there are a small community of people who do that here, but I think the pure cost and the time commitment really has pushed it into being only for the upper class kind of people, and it sounds really harsh and bad to say that, but I feel it's the way. And when I look at the cars that people drive to some of the surf spots, I see like Mercedes-Benz Sprinter vans, fully pimped out. that are $200,000 and brand new, Ford F-250s and company trucks. But I don't see, that kind of guy like me when I was in university driving a beater Honda Element that's like less than $1,000, blowing black smoke out the back. Those are really the memories and what I label as surfing. And when I go travel abroad and in much more affordable locations where you still can find amazing surf, you see those kind of, people, just one pair of shorts, one board, but they're happy and content and able to still surf amazing waves while getting by. So yeah, I think it's a tough discussion as a Canadian that we got to have, but I think something needs to change. I think it needs to become more affordable, and I think people need to be given the opportunity to get out in nature with the way AI and computing is going. I don't think everyone should be forced to work on a computer all day and all night and not be able to access the ocean or access being able to do such outdoor sports. I think it's a good discussion.